Hi, my name's Mark Gessner, and I'm delighted to be here today with Kristin Strunk, who's a really experienced human resources professional. She's got over 20 years of experience with HR management, communication, organizational change, labor relations, international HR, a whole lot more. She's qualified for this, and we're going to be talking to her about interviewing tips. She currently works as an HR professional with Harley-Davidson. She's also really involved in our greater Milwaukee community on a number of fronts, from teaching and continuing ed, serving on the board of the Urban Ecology Center, and near and dear to my heart is she is a Mission Fuel Mentor, which is Cardinal Stritch University's business accelerator for nonprofit leaders. So thank you very much, Kristin, for being here. We're delighted to have you for a few minutes.
Great.
So,
happy to be here.
Thank you. And Kristin, one of the first questions that I have for you is, when you're preparing for an interview, what would you say are the most important things to keep in mind when you prep?
I think there's three really important things to do. The first one is to be familiar with the position that you're applying for. So go back, reread the job description, highlight any things that really stick out to you that match with your background, your interest, or your experience, and really be familiar with what the company is looking for. I think the other thing you can do is really be prepared with some standard answers to some questions. So be prepared to answer questions around your strengths, your areas for improvement. Be prepared to answer questions around interacting with a difficult team or a team member, and how you've handled challenge or conflict. And then I think the other thing is to be responsive and look at the company itself and understand what industry they're in, what's been happening in that industry. Currently, things are probably a little bit up in the air, but just being able to understand, for example, how recent economic situations may have impacted this particular industry or organization are going to show that you've done your research.
Great. So part of what I'm hearing, it's not all about you, it's also about the company and making sure that you get the fit. Great.
Absolutely. And showing that you've done just a little bit of research and you have that understanding of how what you're interested in matches up with what the organization is looking for.
So then just maybe if you generalize, just some quick do's and don'ts. What would you say are a few do's during an interview and 3 don'ts?
I would say, if I think about it, I'll start with the don'ts. Okay. Don't feel like you have to jump in and answer a question before you've given it a little bit of thought. So take a minute, take a beat or two, pause, really make sure you understand what they're asking for. Also, don't feel like you can't take notes or can't have notes in front of you during the interview. So if you have a copy of your resume in front of you, that's not cheating. You're not supposed to have it 100% memorized. And also, don't feel as if you have to continue to speak if you believe that you've answered the question. If the interviewer has a follow-up question for you, believe me, they will ask. I would say in an interview, it's really important to make sure that you are upbeat, you have some positive, energetic body language, especially if you're going to be on a phone screen or doing something virtually. Standing is always a good idea. It portrays a lot of energy. It helps you physically. Don't hesitate to link your school experience or your past part-time work experience into the questions that are also being asked. Your school experience and internships, part-time experience are all relevant to what you bring with you to that opportunity. So do feel like you can bring those examples as well. So those would be the things that I would say would probably be the biggest do's and don'ts.
Yeah, great. So I'm feeling pretty prepared here now for my interview, and I have one last question for now, and it's about, what do you think interviewers, and you've interviewed a ton of people, I think, and during that, aside from making sure they have the content knowledge, the basic experience, like if they're a mechanic, they know what a wrench is, or they know the basics, but what else beyond that knowledge would you be interviewers look for?
So I think interviewers are looking for a couple of things. I think they're looking for real world examples. And if you don't have a specific real world example for a question, you're able to say something along the lines of, I haven't really had that experience, but let me tell you about a situation that might be similar. So just feeling like you're understanding what they're trying to get at. I think interviewers are also really looking for you to be able to say, I can tell you that this didn't particularly go well for me, and here's what I learned from it, and here's what I would do differently next time. Being able to admit that you aren't necessarily perfect. I don't think interviewers, I certainly have never been looking for perfection, just more about, can you learn, can you adapt, can you be in a new situation and be comfortable being uncomfortable? I think those are some of the things that I would be looking for right now, especially in a new candidate.
That's great. So it's okay to be human?
It's absolutely a necessity to be human.
Okay. And one last question as we leave. So I'm going to go to Harley-Davidson for an interview, and maybe I'm going to see you. What's one question I should be ready for from you?
One question you need to be ready for if you're sitting with me is, what's the biggest mistake you made in the last 12 months, and what would you do differently next time?
Well, I'm going to think hard about that, and perhaps folks watching us will think about that too in case they get in your office. But
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Kristin, for sharing some of your experience, your expertise, and your time with us at Cardinal Stritch University. Really appreciate it.
It was great talking with you, Mark. Thank you so much.